Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voices Unheard, produced by Unicorns Live. I am your host, Jessica Samuels. My pronouns are she and her. And thank you for joining us tonight as we once again bring you some underrepresented voices from our community. And my guest this evening is...
I am Alyssa Sundstrom, pronouns she, her, and I'm explaining growing up in a world with autoimmune disorders, Behcet's disease, and juvenile arthritis.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, and we'll get right back to you in one moment. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded lands of the Okanagan Nation and the Syilx people. Thank you to the Canada Kelowna Hotel and Conference Centre for providing this space once again here tonight. And we'd also like to say thank you to Kelowna Pride and Castanet Media for their sponsorship. And now, let's go back to Alyssa.
Hi.
Hi. Now, I have to just clarify, you have your parents here tonight, so
yeah.
Parents, thanks for being here. Your mom called you Allie. Do you prefer Allie, or is that a mom?
I like anything.
Okay, all right, I'll call you Alyssa. So you said, talking about your journey with autoimmune and with Behcet's disease.
Yes.
Let's start with that, because prior to you contacting the show, I had not heard of that. So what is it?
Yeah, so it's a very rare autoimmune disease. It's an inflammatory disorder, and it affects the blood vessels in your body. So basically it can cause inflammation anywhere the blood may flow. So it can cause like inflammation to your joints, which is what happens with me, or it could cause skin, eyes, brain, organs, anything like that. It can cause inflammation and damage. It's rare, but it's more common, I believe, in European or Mediterranean areas of the world. So far, it's not hereditary as I know of, but there are lots of studies around that possibility, as there is some autoimmune link in my family.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's not
Right, you mean some linkage through other autoimmune?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, there's a few family members throughout my cousins and my grandparents that have autoimmune diseases and that kind of thing. So it's not proven to be hereditary, but I've always kind of thought about that, and there are lots of studies about that, so yeah.
You sound like you've done a lot of research on this. You have quite a bit of information.
I have. I've been doing like research on it for like projects through school and that kind of thing. I was very curious to learn more about what I have. I wanted to be an expert on my own body because I knew that I was the only one that knew it the best. So that was always my thing. I wanted to be the expert on what I had, and so that was my goal.
You know, that really resonates with me about being an expert for your own body, and this, I have to say that prior we had a conversation, and you also have celiac disease.
Yes.
I also have celiac disease.
Yes.
And I was diagnosed fairly late in life, just probably about 8 to 10 years ago. And part of that process was being an advocate for my health, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So did you have that? Is that part of your journey and who you are now advocating for yourself?
It definitely is. When I was younger, it was a lot more came from my parents, and my mom especially, and I love her for that. But as I grew up, I learned how to like take those into my own hands, and even when it came to doctor's appointments or talking to other adults, I learned how to be professional about it, but also advocate for what I knew what was right for myself. I knew there were times where there were certain medications I shouldn't be taking or I shouldn't go on, or there were certain foods, that kind of thing, or activities, that kind of thing, that I knew what was best for me, and I was willing to be my best advocate.
So when were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed at 18 months old, so just a year and a half old. Okay. So yeah, that was pretty interesting to like grow up with it. A lot of people are diagnosed with these kinds of things somewhat later in life, and they have to readjust, but this has just always been my normal, or what I know to be normal. So it's very interesting to kind of like see the world through that spectacle, I guess.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have said like, oh, do you experience like this or certain symptoms or thoughts, and it's hard because I don't necessarily know what I would or wouldn't experience without these things, you know? So there's lots of things in my life that are because of my diagnosis, and some are great, some are bad, but I'm grateful for it.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's so much there to talk about. I want to get back to your being an advocate for your health
Yes.
and learning how to speak, because just you're 16, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
I had an experience with a doctor when I was 16
Mm-hmm.
who, it was not a good experience. He
Yeah.
basically was like, nothing's wrong with you, go home, stop looking for
Yeah.
attention. And that really impacted me for many years. How did you learn? You mentioned the impact that your parents have and your mom. How did you learn to then take that and voice it and actualize it when you're sitting there in the doctor's offices?
It was hard at first, but at the same time, I grew a very close relationship because I saw the same team of like rheumatologists and the same nurse since I was diagnosed. So all through my life, I've kind of had the same team working with me. My file at the hospital is like that big. But I learned to grow that really close relationship with them. So for that, I was comfortable to like tell them what I was or was not able to do. There were certain treatments that came with very bad side effects or caused damage to my body more than it caused any good. So I knew that I had to speak up and say something. If that was a conversation they were having, then I knew that I needed to be strong for myself because I know my body best.
Right. Because I imagine, as you mentioned, it's usually diagnosed later on in
Yeah.
life, not typically in North America.
Yes.
So the doctors must have been growing through this process of saying, okay, what's going to work here? And
Yeah.
we have such a young patient.
Yeah, there were a lot of conversations where I heard my parents explaining the disease and, searching it up, or like the spelling of it is so weird, and so
It is a weird spelling.
yeah. So that kind of thing I learned at a very young age, and that's just like what I grew up with, and so then it became accustomed to me. It became my routine or my habits, just to like learn and educate not only myself but others.
Right. You were diagnosed at 1.5 years, and you're saying like this is your life.
Yeah.
So is it something that you openly, widely share that you have Behcet's, or is it something that can you forget about it? I guess is my question.
Sometimes I can. When I was younger, I didn't realize, like when I was going through elementary school and that kind of thing, I didn't realize that it was so different, which in some ways it's not, because it's an invisible illness, so not a lot of people, no one really knows unless you explain. So in some ways doesn't set you apart, but in other ways it set me apart a lot. And I felt like, but I was young, so I didn't understand really that there was that difference between me and other kids. So it was just comfortable. I was accepting of it. But as I got older and into like points where someone would say like, oh no, you shouldn't do this because of your arthritis, or no, you shouldn't eat this. And I said, well, like you only live once, and I try my best in every way I can. So why can't I,
That's a great way to be. So talk about the difference between Behcet's and arthritis.
Yeah, so Behcet's is like I guess you could say it's a blanket autoimmune.
Okay.
For me, it caused celiac and also juvenile arthritis, so it caused the inflammation in my joints. So arthritis is the inflammation in your joints. For me, it's in my ankles, my knees, and my wrists, and my elbows. So what that means is like there's good days and bad days. Your joints can swell, they can ache, they can lots of things. Mine is very weather impacted. I don't know if that's common for other people. I'm sure it is, but mine's very weather impacted. So if it's rainy, if it's thunderstorming, if it's so back and forth every day, then I feel that a lot in my body. And it's kind of like if you ever get like pressure headaches or that kind of thing, you feel it in your body, you can know what's coming. So it's kind of the same with my arthritis.
So what do you do when you know it's coming?
When I know it's coming, I keep on track with my medication. Obviously, I have to. I take painkillers if I need to, Advil, Tylenol, that kind of thing. And that's like, that's another thing. People are like, "What? You take Advil all the time?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So yeah, I have also like physical aids, like if my knee is really hurting and I have to go to work, I put on my knee brace. Same thing with my wrist. If I have to go to school or play sports that day, whatever, I put on my wrist brace, that kind of thing. And I also just verbally have to aid for myself. I tell people, I'm like, I'm not having a great day. I need to take it easy. Or my managers and that kind of thing at work are very kind about that too.
Sounds like there's some good support systems outside of your parents.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really grateful for that. I feel like it's grown a lot. I feel like when I was younger, it probably wasn't that common or widely known. So a lot of people, and again, it's invisible. So a lot of people didn't take that into account. So, but it's really grown a lot better now, and the community has grown. And I also have a lot of amazing support of other kids my age and older that have the same or similar diseases. So that's cool.
When you were younger, a kid, was it hard to kind of I don't know, I guess just make amends with it with yourself and even with your friends? I mean, did your friends understand?
A little bit. I mean, like young kids, nobody really knew what it was at the time, and I had to explain, I'm hurting, or it's hard for me to do things, or my body just has physical limitations. And some of them were nice about that. Some of them compared it to like a sports injury or that kind of thing. So there was a lot of like stigma with that sense, is like, oh, well, it can't be that bad, or, oh, it'll go away, or you'll grow out of it. That doesn't, it's not always the same. In some cases it can happen, but like at the time, my case has always been quite severe in the sense that I've always had to take treatments or medication, that kind of thing.
Right, because there is that element of if you have something going on with you, but it's not visible, autoimmune. I guess the questioning of people about, is it, how bad is it? Is it real? Especially when it's something that they haven't even heard of.
Yeah, for sure. And that was another thing, like having to explain it to doctors or explain it to professionals or teachers, and it's like, it's interesting how much you can educate people just on what you live and what everyone's life is so different. And that's one thing I've really learned, is like everyone can educate people based on just what they know from their reality, which I think is really interesting. And I've definitely been able to take advantage of that and learn more about myself and learn more about my disease. It's almost a culture, I could say, but yeah, I've taken that advantage to just learn more about it and educate others.
Well, I can imagine, because certainly with celiac, you're often in a position of educating, and it is like a culture. You've got your own little tribe. I will disclose that we just happened to be at a meeting last week, and it was a meeting over dinner, and the individuals ordered pizza, which I knew ahead of time, and I was like, no, I'm fine, and just it happens. And I was like, I ate my lunch late or whatever, and then actually you looked across the table at me and you went, celiac, and I said yes, and it was like, okay, we're there. And there's that sense of like, oh, okay, you get it, I don't have to explain, or like everyone ate their pizza, we're like, so what's up?
It's a very comforting sense to know that there's someone, at least just someone else in the room, that knows what you're feeling or knows what you're going through in some sense. I was very lucky in the sense that I got to go to like this summer camp for I think 3 or 4 years in a row, and it's specifically meant for kids with rheumatic diseases that included arthritis, that included lupus, and inflammatory disorders like that. So I met so many people my age, younger and older, that lived their life. And then it was like for a week out of the entire summer, we would get together and we would talk about medications and hospitals and doctors and just all these things that nobody else would really understand or find to be funny, or but it's a very comforting sense to have that support in that community.
Right, sounds freeing and lighthearted. Chatting here with you now, I mean, you certainly appear and come across as well-adjusted and informed. And has it always been that way?
In a sense, yes, because, I grew up with it. There were times where I would like take notes on my day. I'm like, this is how I felt today. This is how my joints felt today. This is what was going on, or if I had to go on like a certain burst of medication, I was like, this is what this caused. These are the symptoms or side effects, So I just learned from myself, and that kind of helped me to find that acceptance with it for one, and also just kind of adjust into the world of like, okay, this is what I go through, this is what not everyone goes through. But it definitely helped me to educate people and feel more comfortable.
What are some of the things that you find people find most surprising about just about what you're going through?
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of like stereotypes or stigmas of like, oh, how are you walking, or what, are you sure you have arthritis? Like, I saw you run the other day.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I have good days and bad days, you know, or like it would be the same thing in school. Like, they're like, oh, last week you could run the whole field and today you're not feeling good. I'm like, yeah, because my body needed that time to rest and recharge. And, you know, that's one thing actually people don't always see, is that like for me, I need some time to recharge. You know, if I work a long stretch or I do a lot of activity, I need like almost a day or two to recharge and rebuild that strength in myself. I get tired very fast and just honestly very low energy. I have days where I just sit in bed, you know, and I just need to take that time for myself to recharge. I feel like that's important for everyone, not whether you have a chronic, you know, it's important to recharge, but that's like on a larger scale, fatigue is a big thing that comes with arthritis and autoimmune disease. So
Right, because your body's working harder and having to work. Your body is, with autoimmune disease, is literally working overtime. So it's working harder. But you're right, I think taking those days to sit, recharge, do nothing is good for everyone, regardless.
Yeah.
Right. And you said a word there, and I think it's important to mention that these are chronic. So these are things that you will have for the rest of your life, most likely.
Yes.
Right.
There is like remission, there is lots of treatments you can take, you know. I've been on, as far as treatments, I've been everywhere from like steroids to just extra strong painkillers to biologics or immunosuppressants, you know. They're used for like a wide range, not just arthritis.
Right.
But I have been on medication since I was born, or not since I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
So that's another world, you know, that not everyone understands or sees.
Right. Yeah, interesting. And what are biologics?
Biologics, it's just a type of it's a class of medication.
Okay.
It can just kind of like change the way your immune system works, or it can sometimes suppress it more, but it's just meant to like fight off the inflammation or help with pain and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And so we're talking a little bit, and we've been focusing maybe on some of the challenges that you've been facing, but you've also been very clear, and it sounds to me that you've had some really great experiences that have come out of this.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those.
Absolutely. So when I was in about 6th grade, I got the opportunity to go to Disneyland for an entire day with the Sunshine Foundation. And it's like, it's kind of similar to Make-A-Wish, but in a less sense. But it was incredible. I went to Disneyland for a day, and I was with my nurse, one of my nurses that was doing my injections or infusions at the time at the hospital for my medication. She got to come, and I met like sheriffs from Anaheim and Orange County, and we just spent the whole day in Disneyland, and I saw the fireworks and met Goofy and Minnie Mouse, and it was an amazing day.
That's pretty special.
Yeah, so that was amazing. This year, in fact, I am doing a TED Talk. I've written my own TED Talk, and right now I'm working on my finishing touches, but I do that in October, and so that's been an incredible thing, and it's about my story. It's about growing up and the challenges and outcomes that I faced. And
a TED Talk, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, I'm very nervous, but there's an amazing team. There's other students. There's a teacher that I'm working with. She's my mentor, and she's amazing. And they've all helped me out so much. You know, they build you with confidence, and they build you with these tools, and like they want you to tell a story. And so I'm really excited to tell my story.
Okay, how long is the talk?
I think the other night I timed it, and I was expecting it to only be 4 minutes. It was 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So I fit a lot into just a couple months of writing, which was pretty incredible, but I'm really proud of it, honestly.
Right. What are some other things you're hoping to achieve?
I really want to go into medical school, for one. I want to possibly work with kids that have autoimmune diseases. Surprise. But yeah, I think that would be just such a rewarding experience to be hands-on and see these kids that may be struggling at a certain time, but say I've been there and this is where I am now. And, just having that actual relation. I haven't met a lot of doctors or specialists that live the same way that you do, but they still, obviously they studied it, but it's a much different experience when you have that living experience as well.
Right. And why do you think that's important for other kids?
I think because like I said, you need that sense of community and support and stability in your life with just someone who just knows what's happening and knows what you're feeling. I think there's so many things that people overlook with autoimmune diseases or like support that gets lost. But I just really want to be able to help and appreciate those kids that may be struggling or may be fighting but don't really have anyone there.
Yeah, to be an advocate for them. Right. Because I think just you being there for them, but I think by the life that you're leading and the example, I mean, it doesn't sound like, and I'm not trying to minimize here, but it doesn't sound like too much is holding you back. I mean, you even said earlier if there's something you wanted to do.
Absolutely. I've never let anything hold me back, not arthritis, not celiac, like I didn't let things hold me back. I said, no, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And that's just always been who I am. There were times where it was harder or I had to just like trying my best wasn't the best I could perform, but some days were better, some days were worse, but I always tried my best and I always did what I could.
Right. And did that take a toll on you mentally if you wanted to do better at something or if you wanted to actually do something and where your body was not able?
Yeah, it did kind of because like I said, with like weather impacts and that kind of thing, there were like seasonal sports or track and field or that kind of thing that happens just when the weather is like going into spring and it's very rainy, and that's when, I start to have like a flare up or that kind of thing. Right now I only have a flare up about 1 or 2 times a year. And it's when those like weather changes happen, like serious flare-ups.
Right.
But in that case, I explain to my teachers and I say like, this is where I'm at, this is what I can't do, and this is why I can't push it today. There were times where I would push myself to the limit and I was exhausted for a week after, and that wasn't okay.
No.
I shouldn't push myself to the point of exhaustion, but I did that, and I'm learning now that I need to respect myself and my body in that sense and take care of myself too. Right.
I know with celiac disease, a lot of individuals focus on the physical symptoms. So, stomach ache, and you don't want to hear all the details. But there's quite a lot of other physiological symptoms, things like, I know, and like you said, it's different for other people, but you can have trouble sleeping, you can maybe be a little bit more anxious. Is it like that with Behcet's as well? Or is it straight up kind of physical aching symptoms?
I think, well, for me with my arthritis, at least, it was like the arthritis caused the physical symptoms, but it's physical symptoms that can definitely take a mental toll on yourself. And it was like, I'm not gonna know what my best day is, I'm not gonna understand. One day I might be in pain or I might not be, but who knows, So that was one thing that like was a question in my mind. Or there's certain, I guess just the fact that like some days when I really wanted to push it and I just absolutely couldn't, then that can almost be heartbreaking sometimes, It's like I want to play this sport, or I want to do this activity, or I want to run a mile, but I couldn't. That was just not something I was able to do. And so that was what definitely took a mental toll on me for me.
Right. But I know, and I happen to know, there's other things that you are active in, and again, just making reference to how we cross paths.
Yes.
So you identify as Indigenous.
Yes.
And you're actually a member of the West Bank First Nation Youth Council,
Yes.
which is where I met you.
Yeah.
Talk about your experience being on that youth council, because I spent some time with you guys, and a very active, engaged group, lots of great opinions.
Yeah.
What's some of the stuff that you guys do?
I know we definitely try and advocate. We're youth council, so we try and advocate for the other kids in our community, you know, that need a voice or need different certain rights, or, you know, that inclusion in the community. And I think that's really important. We work with Chief and Council, our Chief Chris Derrickson, and so like we work very closely with all of the members in that community. And I think it's very rewarding to feel like your opinion matters, and your opinion is, in that sense, a part of your community. Like you're making an impact directly to your community. So that's one thing. We work a lot, like we were talking about the other night, trying to engage the other youth and trying to make them feel welcomed and happy and safe and that kind of thing, which I think is super cool. If I'm being totally honest, it's only my first year on youth council, but so far it's an amazing group of people, and like I love every person on there, and I've only gotten to know a fraction of them, you know, so I think it's really incredible, just like the opportunities that it can open up, that I know it will open up for me. So.
And what is something that you hope to bring then to the youth council? How long is the term again?
I think it's 3 or 5 years.
Yeah, right. So what's something you hope, what impact do you hope to bring to the council?
I don't know. I think my goal honestly is just to make people feel welcomed and feel safe and happy. I want to make people smile, and that's my biggest thing. I love just knowing that I can bring happiness into the world, or more positivity. I feel like our world needs so much positivity, and so like that's what I really want to do. And so if I can bring a positive idea, or I can bring like just a smile, or know that I'm making a difference in a child's life, then I think that's really important.
And those words are particularly significant now with, you know, we're in the midst of this global pandemic, and many individuals are struggling, and certainly the Indigenous population is struggling with COVID significantly more than the rest of the populations all across the world. And so you say just inclusiveness and smiling and energy, it's very timely.
Yeah, I'd say I'm a very lighthearted person, you know, there's not a lot that can like hold me down mentally or physically for a long time, other than like arthritis.
Other than that.
There's not a lot that can really drag me down in a mental sense, that I will not try and be happy, that I won't be smiling, you know. That's my biggest thing. I want to be positive. I've gone through so much negativity and so much negative feelings. I'm like, I'm done with that, you know. I just want to be a light and bring light to the world.
Right. And you had opportunity, speaking of the pandemic, to travel just before flights and everything was shut down. You got in just under the wire. Talk about where you went and what you went for.
Yeah, so I applied for a spot. I think there was only about 6 spots for the entire WFN, West Bank First Nations youth community. So I applied and I got one of those spots. So we went to Ottawa for, I think, 4 or 5 days. That was with one of the girls who is on the youth council, so that was cool to make a connection with her. I made another really amazing friend, and we still keep in contact and that kind of thing. But yeah, we went to Ottawa, and it was for something called the Inspire Awards. INDSPIRE, and that's like Indigenous Inspire. So that was really cool. It was an award ceremony that honored Indigenous people that made that difference in their community. There was different categories. There was like health or social justice or that kind of thing. So like someone who just made a very significant impact to their community, and they were awarded for that. So that was really amazing. And then I got to be a part of like youth workshops and that kind of thing. And I got to learn about the university there, University of Ottawa. That was really amazing. And that's definitely one of my high goals now I want to apply there for school, hopefully. And then, yeah, so I got to look around the university. I got to learn about so many other schools too in the area, about like University of Toronto or Queen's, that kind of thing. There was a whole like fair kind of going on that we got to just learn about so many different opportunities in the world post-secondary. And I think that was one of their things, is they wanted to inspire youth to keep going past high school. They wanted to bring that optimism and that hope into youth to keep going past just graduating. You know, I think that's a very common problem among Indigenous communities, is like it's just they don't have not a lot of students graduate or get to that point of going beyond post-secondary high school. So that was one thing they really wanted to like encourage and inspire that, which was really amazing.
Yeah.
And that definitely opened my eyes too. It opened my eyes to the rest of the country, where I haven't gone past Saskatchewan until then, so that was pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. And yeah, it sounds very inspirational and yeah, very poignant and strategic, really.
Yeah.
Why do you think graduating high school and going through to post-secondary education is something that is not as frequent when we're talking about Indigenous youth?
I think some of it can come from where their families are at. A lot of them most of us have family members that have gone through residential school. Both of my great-grandparents went through residential school and suffered through a lot of trauma and pain and heartbreak because of that, and their families watched that. And I think that can take such a big part of your life that it becomes, your family becomes that priority, or just like getting around that. A lot of them went to drugs or alcohol to try and cope with that trauma, and I think that was, unfortunately, it passes down. And so among Indigenous communities, especially our generation right now, is like they want us to keep going. They want us to be hopeful and positive and keep moving and really get to a high place that we're proud of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's inspirational. I find you talking and talking about your history and your hopes and everything that your family has gone through and you're going through is quite inspirational. And you said, it's kind of your goal is to make people smile and have hope. And so just as we wrap up before we go, what do you want people to take away from our conversation here tonight and about you as an individual?
I think there is so much that can happen in this world. There is so much that could go wrong or could go right, but live in the moment and enjoy every chance you get, every opportunity. There's going to be a lot of negative or a lot of uneasy feelings or situations, but you have to take those and roll with it and keep moving and keep pushing, because if you just stop, then you're just going to stop, and that's not helping. You need to just keep pushing and keep thinking positive and find something in that situation. There was always, when there was something bad that occurred in my life, there was always something that I could find to take away. I was like, I just need to take every chance I get now.
Awesome. I can't wait for your TED Talk.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it was great to hear you speak. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening to Alyssa's story. I would like to once again thank the Canada Kelowna Hotel and Conference Centre for hosting us here in this space, and Kelowna Pride and Castanet Media as sponsors. Have a good evening. I'll see you next week.